Now we have May 14th, and this is when the national news media spotlight is going to explode on Watch Hill, Rhode Island. Unfortunately, the story is going to be directed all toward the feelings of a very famous music star. On May 14th, a femur washes up right next to Taylor Swift's Watch Hill Mansion in Westerly, Rhode Island. And while our local news outlets were picking up every body that was being found all over southern New England, including this story, the national news outlets really did not descend onto the story. We had a few big true crime shows came down, did their shtick, but when this femur washed up beside Tay-Tay's place, you bet your bottom dollar they was all talking about it all over the country. And it was a flash in the pan. The attention was put on Taylor, her feelings about the femur that was found near her oceanside home in Westerly, and not so much attention was being given to the fact that this body part belonged to an actual person in the scope of the national news media. And the femur was taken for its autopsy. DNA was performed about June 6th, somewhere between June 6th and June 10th. It was identified. And no national media about that. Fancy that. Taylor had given her statements, and that was that. She was no longer saying anything else about it. Had nothing to do with her. Had nothing to do with her property. And national media dropped this story. In June, we discovered that the femur belonged to 31-year-old Eric Wine. Now, in April, Eric came to Rhode Island on a trip. He came to Rhode Island often. He had a brother and a friend that lived in the Rhode Island area. And on this particular trip, he was a little tight-lipped about his adventure to Rhode Island in April. He rented a hotel room in Charleston, Rhode Island. He rented it out for a week. He took a week off of work. He told work he would be back. And on April 10th, his vehicle was found abandoned on Ocean Avenue in South Kingston. And the police towed that vehicle. Now, on April 10th, the news media was focusing on two rather large breaking stories. In Connecticut, in Killingly, Connecticut, we had remains that were found off of Woodward Street by the railroad tracks. So that was a big breaking news scandal. And then we had Framingham, Massachusetts, where Brooks Hood, 27 years old, was found in a home on Fenwick Street. So we have two crime scenes going at once. We have the general public asking the authorities many, many questions about New England possibly being hunting grounds for a serial murderer, and the South Kingston police go and find an abandoned car that belongs to Eric Wine. Now, Eric was not reported missing until April 18th. That's when he gets reported missing to the Mansfield, Massachusetts Police Department. On the 14th, the femur washes up next to Tay-Tay's house. And in June, we find out that femur belonged to 31-year-old Eric Wine. It's a true mystery what may have happened to Eric. There's not a lot of information out there on either his disappearance or the finding of his femur, and his family does at this point have a lot of questions as to what happened to Eric. So we're going to kind of leave Eric's story here as a mystery, and as information comes out, we will be doing a deeper dive into what could have happened to 31-year-old Eric Weinstein. May 27th, we now find ourselves in New Hampshire. Alexis Garcia, University of New Hampshire student. His vehicle was found abandoned at the Scammell Bridge rest area in Newington, New Hampshire, near the shoreline of Little Bay. The police have ruled out foul play in that instance. So I know a lot of news reporting was done on Alexis Garcia, but we're going to take him out of the mix when we talk further about the potential of a New England serial murderer. It's now June 1st, and unfortunately, more remains are going to be found in Massachusetts, in Milton, Massachusetts. But before we discuss the remains that were found in Milton, Massachusetts, I want to talk a little bit about the vibe in New England at this point. At this point, everyone is getting laser focused on a few things. They're getting laser focused on Springfield, Massachusetts, Joanne Garelli, where she was found, and Megan Meredith, where she was found, the proximity of the bodies, and their ages. The ages are going to start really being focused on by people that are living in the southern New England area, because it just seems that the age range is from the late 40s right up into almost 60s. And that plays an important factor as to why the general public now is getting very upset with the authorities in New England, trying to say none of this is connected, because they are seeing maps that are connecting bodies in certain proximities and distances of each other. And that begins the real conversations about Joanne Garelli and Megan Meredith of Springfield, Massachusetts, being found not far from each other. It is giving talk about Samuel Stovall and Stephen Myers. They were both found in Taunton within the proximity of Plymouth High School. At this point, we haven't got to the point where we're going to have the arrest in Stephen Myers' murder. And then we also have the connection that people are starting to really hop on between the remains found in Killingly, Connecticut, and Forster, Rhode Island, where Michelle Romano was discovered. So now New England really is laser focusing on these cases, the proximity, the age range, the fact that there are some male and some female, but the age range is staying pretty steady there. And now a slight wrench is going to be put into that mix in New England, because another person is going to be found in Milton, Massachusetts, and that is Adriana I'm really going to struggle with her last name. It's Razzo. She was 21. She was found in the woods of Milton, Mass, about 8 miles south of Boston. Now, when authorities came out to discuss Adriana's discovery, it was also mentioned that her discovery was being noted as the 13th body to show up with little explanation. Her family has gone on to describe the circumstances of Adriana's death as suspicious. So this case is still being investigated, and this is June 1st, when unfortunately a 21-year-old woman is found in the woods of Milton, Massachusetts, just 8 miles south of Boston, Mass. June 19th turns out to be another tragic day in New England. Tina Daigle, 38, of Hardwick, Vermont, was discovered along the roadside of the highway in Woodbury, Vermont, and police deem her passing as suspicious. And this is where we start getting Vermont involved in the hysteria of a potential serial killer. At this time, people were still saying that the child actress that passed away in Bennington, Vermont, and Tina Daigle that passed away in Woodbury, Vermont, may be connected. So there was still a bit of a buzz and a swirl over that in the groups, on the Reddits, on the Facebooks, in the community in Vermont. People were starting to get pretty nervous. Now, for those of you who don't know, the New Hampshire, Vermont area has had serial murderer activity in the past. And there is one serial murderer that stalked the Connecticut River Valley area in the 70s, and the Connecticut River Valley serial murderer, and he has never been caught. He stalked the area between 1978 and 1988. He had a total of, I believe it's 8 victims, and 7 passed away, and one of his victims actually survived, and she was able to, in 1988, she was able to give a description of the Connecticut River Valley serial murderer. And to this day, he has not been caught. He would be about 77, 78 to 80, 82 years old today at this point. She calculated his age to be about 30 to 40 years old, and that was back in 1988. And I know that the Connecticut River Valley serial murderer has been brought into this discussion, but I don't think it has any relevance to what may or may not be going on in New England at this time. So we go from Woodbury, Vermont on June 19th. It is now going to be June 24th. And now 2 bodies are going to be found in Lincoln, Rhode Island. So now we're back in Rhode Island. And the hype and hysteria are going to absolutely increase until people start understanding that the two bodies found in Lincoln, Rhode Island have nothing to do with the serial murderer potential in the area. Now, the first body was found at Lincoln Woods in Lincoln, Rhode Island. That's a state park that we have, and you go swimming in it, and it's a lovely place to hang out, and we've been swimming in it all our lives and hanging out down at Lincoln Woods. It was the thing to do. We were teenagers, you hung out down Lincoln Woods. It's just a beautiful state park. And a Providence man who was swimming at Lincoln Woods disappeared, and his body was discovered in the water. Now, his family knew he had disappeared swimming, but at the time of the reporting on June 24th, WPRI, WJAR TV, the family wasn't being interviewed while they were looking for the Providence man that had drowned at Lincoln Woods. And there was a heat wave. This was the week of the heat wave. And I had people in my family, my mom called me up and she's like, you would not believe how hard it is. The temperature reading outside her car was like 108 degrees. And, thank goodness I have the air conditioner. Thank goodness we're not having brownouts right now, because that's a common thing in Rhode Island. When it doesn't ever get that hot, but when it does get that hot, they get a lot of brownouts and blackouts because the grid goes down. Now, we're still in Lincoln, Rhode Island. It's the same afternoon, and a body is discovered behind the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah Witnesses. This is during the heat wave. Behind the Jehovah Witness Church, there's shade. And I have said this before in another video, that I do not think that the body that was found behind the Jehovah Witness Church had anything to do with the serial murderer in New England. I think it was a hot day. I think the death itself was deemed not suspicious. I think it was a tragedy of the heat wave that was going on in Rhode Island that was pushing people into, if you did not have air conditioning, it was pushing you toward the water. It was pushing you to go swimming. It was pushing you to seek any kind of reprieve that you can. And there are no further reportings on the two deaths that occurred that day, June 24th, in Lincoln, Rhode Island. So we are taking those two deaths completely out of the equation. On June 29th, we are back in Vermont. We are in Guilford, Vermont at this time, where a body is discovered in the wooded area behind I-91, the rest stop in Guilford, Vermont. Now, the police deemed this death not suspicious, and I'm going to tell you why this death has nothing to do with the potential serial murderer in New England. However, there's still talk that there's 3 bodies in Vermont. At this point on June 29th, nobody realized the impact of the identity of the male body found in Guilford, Vermont. Matthew Rice, 59 years old, of East Hampton, Massachusetts, was the identity of the Guilford, Vermont body. And he was a Northampton special police officer. So he was a police officer, and had nothing to do with anything to do with a potential serial murderer in New England. And it's a tragedy. Our first responders, they see things that you and I could never conceive. I have a lot of friends that are police officers, and a lot of friends that are EMTs and paramedics and firemen, and they see the worst of humanity. So it is a great tragedy that that a police officer was found in Guilford, Vermont. And so that kind of catches us all up. Everything's kind of hunky-dory for a few days. Groups are still adding things, findings in and subtracting some findings out, although they tend to subtract less findings out than they're adding in. And the body count is racking up to 36 to 40 bodies now. When you look at the serial murderer groups online, the Reddits and everything else. But as of June 1st, we know that authorities put Adriana, the young woman found in Milton, Massachusetts, as the 13th body with little explanation. So now we move into July, and we're going to move into Maine. Officially, the gossip on the street about the serial murderer finally hits up into Maine, and we're going to be focusing on Union, Maine. On July 2nd, a woman by the name of Sunshine Stewart, she was 48 years old, of Tennant's Harbor, was out paddleboarding on Crawford Pond. And she never came back to shore on July 2nd, and on July 3rd, she was reported missing. She was found. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was homicide. And that brings Union, Maine into the discussion of a connection to the potential aspect of a serial murderer running around New England. Now, Sunshine's case is still open. It is deemed a homicide, and the Maine State Police are still looking for information. So if you saw Sunshine Stewart paddleboarding on Crawford Pond on July 2nd in the area of 100 Acre Island between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., please contact the Maine State Police at 1-207-624-7076. That's 1-207-624-7076. And that is if you were in the area of 100 Acre Island between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. and you saw Sunshine Stewart paddleboarding on Crawford Pond on July 2nd, please contact the Maine State Police. So, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of my world, guys and ghouls, we end up at the conclusion of this series about a potential psychopath using New England as their hunting ground. Do I think that there is a psychopath running around New England? I don't know. I would like to tell you of the cases, of all the cases we've discussed during these 3 episodes, I would like to tell you of the cases that I am really focused on. And I'm focused on these cases because of the age range, because of the gender, because of the surroundings that the remains were found in, because of proximity and distance to each other, because of some glaring similarities. I am not positive that Paige Fanning even though she was the first person recovered in Norwalk, Connecticut from the river. I'm not positive she is really a part of this. She was found on March 6th. And then right after that, we had another discovery. But I am really not convinced with everything I've seen that Paige is the start point. However, I'm going to keep Paige on my list. I believe Joanne Gorelli, who was found in Springfield, Massachusetts on January 7th, I believe Joanne, in my opinion, is the actual first victim of a bigger thing that is going on. Joanne Gorelli, January 7th, and Megan Meredith, who is also found in Springfield, Massachusetts, about 13 to 15 minutes from where Joanne was found in January. So they are feeling to me somehow connected. Denise Leary, middle-aged woman again, as was Joanne and Megan Meredith, found in a quiet, wooded location. All three of those women were found in quiet, wooded locations. Tina Daigle, 38 years old, found in a quiet, wooded location in Woodbury, Vermont. The remains found in Killingly in a quiet, wooded location near the railroad tracks just off of Woodward Street. Michelle Romano, discovered in Forster, Rhode Island, in a quiet, wooded area just off the turnpike. The remains in Killingly, although they are male, the age range is up into the 40s, unidentified. Michelle Romano, again, her age fits with Denise Leary, Joanne Gorelli, Megan Meredith. I believe Michelle was 56 years old. Tina Daigle was 38. It's kind of the same pool. Adriana, she was found in Milton, Massachusetts. She is the youngest to be found. She was found in a quiet, wooded area, and she has been dubbed by both the media and authorities as the 13th discovery with little to no explanation as to why. I also want to keep Alexis Garcia. He was the University of New Hampshire student. He went missing. And his car was found, abandoned car was found, and subsequently he was discovered. And Eric Wine, he had his femur wash up right near Taylor Swift's house in Rhode Island. Again, an abandoned car being found, and then his remains being found. As far as Framingham goes, I'm not really certain about Brooks Hood or Anthony Lopez. Framingham's a city. Cities have problems. Brooks Hood is from Bridgeport, Connecticut. Bridgeport, Connecticut has problems. So I'm not sure. The Framingham police say that they're not connected. I don't know if they are or they aren't, but they've got absolutely no information further than both deaths are suspicious. And Anthony Lopez, his family seems to believe that he was being targeted. So, and that is suspicious. So I'm not sure with those two gentlemen. Brooks Hood was 27. And Anthony Lopez was in his 30s, so I do believe he was in his 30s. So I am keeping them like Paige Fannin. I'm not sure, but there is a possibility. And lastly, Sunshine Stewart, the 48-year-old woman who was paddleboarding on Crawford Lake on July 2nd, reported missing on July 3rd. Her remains were found, and I have yet to understand how someone goes out paddleboarding between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. and then it becomes a homicide. So I am keeping Sunshine Stewart in the mix. When I was doing the maps for my video, AI gave me this little gem warning me that I was traveling in an area that has a potential serial murderer in it and to be careful. While all the police departments are telling me, nothing to see here, folks, AI is connecting dots in such a way that is warning me if I want to go from Framingham to Taunton to Plymouth. Well, we got problems probably. Just be aware of your surroundings. So I thought that was a little, that gave me a little chuckle in the midst of all the death. I present my true crime and my missing persons cases in a way that a lot of people might not be accustomed. I deal in fact. I deal in what is reported. I am on all the Facebook groups. I'm on all the Reddit boards. I'm there. I'm reading. I'm looking. I do not allow conjecture, idle speculation, rumor, or innuendo influence what I report on. It's just fact. And when I run out of facts, there's no more story. We had a little girl in the next town go missing, and I did quite a few videos about Stephanie Damron. We ran out of facts. She's still missing. Her parents still are not talking. There's no facts, and I'm not going to add speculation. I'm not going to add my imagination. I'm not going to add my opinion. People may not like my method. People may be here for the gossip, the rumor, the innuendo. That's what Facebook is for. That's what those groups are for. I don't deal in anything that isn't presented directly by a family member or by the authorities. Because I know what it's like to listen to rumors, conjecture, speculation, supposition, gossip, and flat out lies when you lose someone that you love very tragically. "37 years ago, my friend was brutally murdered. I was 17 years old, and Lauren was 18. Her parents had to have a closed casket. Such was the brutality of her demise. She is one of Rhode Island's unsolved murders. I can remember people who didn't know Lauren. This happened in the summer. She had graduated high school. I was going into my senior year. Happened July 19th. And when we went back into school in September, there was a lot of people knew her. There was rumor, there was innuendo, there was speculation. things I knew she wasn't, things I knew to be factually untrue. I never want anyone's family, friend, loved one to feel that pain of untruth, of rumor. I know a lot of YouTube channels do that. Content creators put their thought process into it. I can't do that to anyone else because I know how that feels. I will not speculate. You see, Lauren would have given you the shirt off of her back. Lauren would have helped anyone, whether she knew you or not. Lauren made friends with everybody, whether she knew you or not. Her passing shaped how I parented. When my children got of the teenage years, I wanted to know when they went to a friend's house, if they were leaving and going to the mall, I wanted to know whether or not a parent was bringing them, or they were getting driven by their friends, or they were driving their friends to the mall. I wanted to know every step of the way where they were. There is evil in the world. Evil without explanation. Someday I would like to share Lauren's story with everybody, but today's not that day. Lauren was so kind, so beautiful, so rare. She was the kindness that you want to see in the world. That is why I do what I do, the way that I do it, for my true crime and missing persons. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of my world, be the kindness that you want to see in the world. And as always, Carpe Diem, because no one promises us a tomorrow.